Hello, my friends. Today I have a song for you that's called A Still Small Voice. Now, this song is based on a story from the Old Testament or the Hebrew Bible. And in that story, there's a prophet whose name is Elijah. And Elijah wanted some time to talk to God. So he went up a mountain inside of a cave. And while he was in the cave, he heard a sound. So he went out to the edge of the cave, and there was a huge wind. It was swirling and making so much noise. And he listened, but God's voice was not in the wind. So he went back in the cave. And a little while later, he heard another noise. And he went out and he heard a big rumbling sound. And it turned out that the earth was quaking and moving. Everything was shaking. And he listened, but God's voice was not in the earthquake. So he went back in the cave. And then there was another sound. It was a blazing fire. The flames were leaping up and making a roaring sound. And he listened, but God's voice was not in the fire. So he waited. Elijah waited. And then he heard a still small voice reaching out to him. And he was very quiet. He could hear it. It was God's voice speaking to him in the quiet. So that's what this song is about. Sometimes God does speak loudly. Sometimes God does speak in the thunder. But sometimes God speaks in the quiet. So we can listen for God's voice. So I'm going to teach you the gestures that go with the song. You ready? Okay, let's try it. The first words are, listen to the wind, can you hear the Spirit? So we're going to put you can do this with me. You put your hand to your ear, and then you put it out like you're listening for the Spirit. And then you do that on the other side. And then, if God's voice is in the thunder, you can rejoice. Okay, so we're going to show like a big movement like the thunder, like this, over your head. If it's in the thunder, go on, rejoice. You can be happy. But if the earthquakes and fires make it hard to hear God's voice, so we're going to go like this. If the earthquakes and fires make it hard to hear it, try that again with me. There's a big rumbling. If the earthquakes and fires make it hard to hear it, God's often in the sound of a still small voice. Your fingers are going to come up like this. God's often in the sound of a still, small voice. Awesome. Okay, let's see if we can do that whole thing together, and I'll sing it this time. So we start with, listen to the wind. Okay, we go like this. Listen to the wind, can you hear the Spirit? If it's in the thunder, go on, rejoice. But if the earthquakes and fires make it hard to hear it, God's often in the sound of a still small voice. Good. Let's try it again. You try singing along with me, okay? We start out with listen to the wind. Listen to the wind, can you hear the Spirit? Now the thunder. If it's in the thunder, go on, rejoice. But if the earthquakes and fires, but if the earthquakes and fires make it hard to hear it, God's often in the sound of a still small voice. Great, that's awesome. So we can feel the big power, but we can also quiet ourselves and hear God's small voice. Beautiful. Okay, so that's the refrain, and that's going to happen several times. There are also some verses, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the verses. So in the verses, we're talking about the different ways God talks. So sometimes God rumbles from the mountain, a cleansing fire, a swirling pillar of smoke. God speaks in a blaze of daylight, a thunderstorm. But often God's in the peaceful pasture, the cool, still waters gently restoring the soul. God's there in the quiet darkness, the rock that's safe and warm. So you see, there are different ways. There's big energy and there's calming energy. So we're going to express that in movement. And so the first part of the verses, I'm going to have this orange scarf. And when we're talking about the thunderstorms and the fire, I'm going to wave it around in a big way, making a lot of energy. And then when we come to the second part, I'm going to have my other scarf. And this is going to represent the calm, the pastures, the flowing water, the simple, gentle ways that God speaks. You can breathe and move in a gentle way. So when we come to the verses, you can watch those verses and see those different feelings, or you can join in. You can do that with your arms, with your face, or maybe you have a scarf or two scarves that you can try doing the movements with me. And they're a little bit more freeform. So some of those other images in the verses talk about God like a roaring lion, or a mighty eagle, or fierce like a mama bear. But God is also like a lamb, a dove of peace, a gentle donkey. Or God is like a mighty ruler, powerful person, rich and famous. Or God is like a little child, or a baby, or the God of the poor and the lowly. And God can speak to us through all different kinds of people. Sometimes they're very simple. Okay, so that's how we're going to sing the whole song together and dance it. So let us enter like Elijah at the edge of the cave and listen for God's voice together.